And hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome back to Operation New Hope. And I'm your host, Kevin Simmons. And today we have a very special guest that you can obviously see with me. His name is Aaron Sadoff. And he's someone that is very near and dear to the hearts of Marian University because he's a very big go-getter in our community. Now, Aaron, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, thanks a lot, Kevin. It's great to be here. New hope. I love that. I mean, nothing happens without hope. So I'm Aaron Sadoff. Ironically, born in 1971. We'll start there, and then we'll fast forward. So currently I'm the executive director of the Fond du Lac Area Foundation. 25 years prior, I took over that job in August. I was in public education, where 13 years as a superintendent, 3 as a principal, and about 9 as a high school psychology, mostly teacher, and some history. And my history with Marian University is I got my graduate degree in management and my master's in educational leadership, and I entered the PhD program. I didn't get to the dissertation level, but I got my superintendent's license, and now I'm fortunate to, I think this is my 3rd going on 4th year as a trustee at Marian University, dedicated to this community, and I love your message of new hope, and I'm excited to be here and to meet your viewers on this kind of newer podcast that I'm sure is going to explode and flourish.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for that warm welcome, Aaron. So today we'll actually just be talking a little bit about some of the things that the newer generations might need to thrive, especially in terms of like skill sets or even like the mindsets that they might need. So I would like to start out by kind of asking you, how are you defining your success today?
I define the success. Oh, I love the gold microphone too. I define success is how many people I can help. I mean, my grandpa Wimberger. So I grew up. I've got on one side a Sadoff and Foy, and the other side Howe and Wimberger. So my grandpa Wimberger, German, he had a saying. He says, "Love don't buy whiskey." You need money. You need. You have to work. You have to do some things.
Yeah.
But within that jam, there's an opportunity to make a difference. And really, I find success the more people that you can help, and the more that you invest in others, the more you get back. It's kind of like the mindset: if everybody looked out for themselves, we'd have one person looking out for us, and that's us. But if everybody looked out for everybody, all of a sudden we have immense amounts of people that are looking out for your well-being. And so I think one of the things that I would say is very, very important is it revolves around really 2 concepts: the idea of right now and hope. And you had this new hope's a great thing. Hope is an idea that I think that to maintain and believe that better can come and that it will happen. But that's the goal. You want that, and you can't get rid of that. But what you can control is right now. And, I've been doing some research, and I'm writing a book called Shelf Life. We could talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
But really, my advice is what impact can you have? Maintain hope, maintain that things can get better, and then realize you are a cog in that wheel, and that that things don't happen just 'cause. You have to do something. You can't just wish and hope for things to happen. You have to roll up your sleeves and do it. And I would say that as we move forward, I think more and more you're starting to learn in the college level. And I think once you get past the entry-level jobs and making widgets, we're starting to find that, and this isn't new, but the more that you know how to work with people, invest and support people, the more you get back. So really, I think the key to success is that networking, those connections, and really focusing on what you can right now do for yourself and to help make other people better while maintaining that great sense of hope.
Absolutely. Really, thank you for that big sentiment. I think that it is really interesting that you mentioned networking because that is something that I, too, believe is a very big predicator in what defines someone that might be a little bit more successful than others. And I think that a lot of people might view how to network in a different manner. Like, I think sometimes that some people might not know how to do it, or some just might not maybe want to do it because you have like this age where it's super easy to make those connections, but some people are less inclined to actually go through. So, like, what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, being in public education for 25 years, also, being a dog, having dogs and pets, I think also people can smell fake connections. Like it's not how many LinkedIns you have or how many likes you have on Facebook or friends. I think it's really about that quality. And networking isn't just about how many you have, it's a quality ones that you have. I also think back to, everybody is an amateur when they start.
Yeah.
When looking at from the HR standpoint, really have developed this mindset that I'll steal from a guy by the name of Admiral James Stockdale. He was the the longest held prisoner, POW, highest rank. So he's an admiral, and he was 8 years in the Hanoi Hilton. He was a POW in Vietnam. John McCain, some people might know what that is. He was in the same prisoner of war area. And what he said, what Admiral Stockdale said, is he goes, and I'm paraphrasing this, so I'm sure I'm not saying it as well and articulately as he did. But when you have talent and you don't have experience, or when you have talent but you don't have experience, you have potential. When you have experience without talent, well, then you kind of have a wasted life, right? Yeah. But if you have talent and experience, you get wisdom. And the only way you can get that wisdom is by really, really going through and learning and having those experiences. And I say that because I feel more intelligent now than I ever have. And it's not because I know more. It's because I realize I don't know much. And I'm open to learning. So when we look at networking and we start, in my thought process of networking, it's about it's not so much about the how many's, it's about the quality of the networks that you have. Because if you treat few people very well and you maintain those networks, you're going to see a lot of things come, mostly by helping you, because they're going to be invested in you. I bring back being a teacher and in education, and also with pets. People can smell fake. And, if you're not into Facebook, that's fine. If you're not into LinkedIn, that's fine. If you're not into Twitter, that's fine. But the way that if you want to be successful and really get yourself out there, you have to take risk. Yeah. And we could talk a little bit about that later on. I've got this, I think I made up a new paradox, which we can talk about in a minute, but it's really about that quality. And what that is, it's about listening. It's about really authentically trying to make connections with people, not just to advance yourself, but to advance your learning. And also, what value do you bring them? A lot of younger people that are probably listening to this podcast or that you interact with in college, that you think you don't have much experience or much to add. Oh, contrary. Your knowledge and understanding and view of this world is so different than what a white man at the age of 51 who grew up in the Midwest is. Mm-hmm. I mean, so you bring a lot. It might not be the talent of the how-tos, but the what is and how things are shaped, and your perspective is so valuable to people who haven't lived with their whole life. Like I could ask you, do you remember not having a cell phone or when they weren't around? And the answer is?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I can remember flip phones. I can remember the sliding box on cable. I can remember 4 channels, and that's because we could get PBS. So, yeah, I think when you talk about networking, be confident in who you are, and you have a lot to bring to the table, but networking has zero to do about you. It has to do about with helping others and making those connections. That connection's where it's at. And I'll leave you with this, is that, I can't be a dad if I don't have kids. I can't be a spouse if I don't have a spouse. I can't be a friend if I don't have a friend. I can't be a brother if I don't have a sister. Our relationships are what define who we are. Other than that, we're just Homo sapiens. So when you network, it's creating those relationships and identifying and being part of something. Like I just came from Rotary. I'm a Rotarian. I'm part of a service organization. If I wasn't part of that, I couldn't call myself this and then have those networks to help other people with like minds. So that's really, you have a lot to bring to the table always, no matter what age. And it's about the authenticity and quality of those relationships that matters most.
Wow. There's actually like a lot to really dive into right there, especially when you talk about the authenticity of like the connections that you make. And I think that there is a lot of valuable points right there. And, for those of you guys that are listening at home, definitely take some of this stuff into account. It may not necessarily seem like you might be able to bring value to, say, for example, someone who is like a millionaire, but in reality, there is some kind of value that they have from interacting with you, mm-hmm. because you're able to provide them with the perspective that even they might not have been able to, provide.
Absolutely.
So, and, something else to keep in mind as well is as you expand your skill sets and as you do start to, develop your connections, keep in mind not only the value that, again, like you said, the value that people can bring to you, but also how you can kind of expand the value that you receive and really give that back into other people, mm-hmm. because that'll be how we kind of circumvent a bigger and larger tight-knit network. And I'd also like to learn a little bit more about the paradox that you mentioned, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you bet. So many of you might have heard of Brene Brown. She's really great positive psychologist about vulnerability, empathy, curiosity. Ted Lasso. Do you watch Ted Lasso?
Oh, yeah, actually a little bit.
All right, so it's a great show, and he talks about, it's about European soccer and stuff, but he talks about this idea of being, curious. He quotes Walt Whitman, be curious. So when we start talking about relationships and how we can really be better together, there's a saying that curiosity killed a cat.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you start looking like I was online and I typed in curiosity killed a cat. You see a cat chewing on a cord that's plugged in, or we've heard curiosity kills a cat. But without curiosity, that cat couldn't learn different things. And if you think about us being curious, there's been a lot of times where we thought we knew what our idea was and it was going to go really good, and we start reading. Like, how many times have you gone into a book and you start reading like, that's not for me. But you're curious to find out that. Or maybe people going on dates. You know what? I'm going to swipe right. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Left or right. Well, anyways, but I'm going to go on a date, and now you go there, and it's, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe this, right? So there's that saying that curiosity killed the cat, right? Mm-hmm. But the paradox there is how many lives do cats have?
9.
So, well, my thought process, and I'm going to trademark this, everybody, but you can use it, right? So the whole idea is I call it the cat paradox, where people say curiosity killed the cat, but guess what? You got 9 lives. So without expanding and taking a risk, you got to know sometimes it's not going to work. You can't expect every time that you do something to work. That's with networking. That's with dating. Your one true love. The reality of it is that might not exist unless you think it does, but it might be the 14th person you meet. Yeah. But if you think it's that first one, you're done. It's okay. People say we have to create a culture of failure. There's no way that any of us go into a situation saying, you know what, I don't want this to work. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You want to make sure that if it doesn't work, let's do it quickly. But the reality when I see about relationships or just life in general for a person growing is that, curiosity could kill the cat. And you could go down lines where you could, seriously, you think about, like, we'll just take the analogy of a relationship. You meet somebody, you fall in love, this is really good, I'm going to trust him, blah, blah, blah. And the higher you go on that ladder of love, the larger the fall. And all of a sudden, now your heart's ripped out. You feel terrible, but if you learn something, if you can come back, if you realize that, the life isn't imperfect and maybe this isn't everything you thought, you learn from that. Yeah, curiosity might have killed you that one time, but you got 8 more lives. And I really think that that cats have 9 lives. I think they can regenerate and repopulate those lives quite a bit. So when we start talking, and not only with relationships, but really in your life, I want to quote, have you ever heard of Daniel Pink?
Yeah, actually, a little bit.
Yeah, so if anybody out there from a business standpoint, organizational psychology standpoint, he does a lot of motivation. He's done some stuff with regret, how to talk to strangers, human to self. One of his first and foremost pieces of work was called Drive, and it was about motivation, what truly motivates people. And in that, truly what he talked about is that what really motivates people, when you get past this whole widgets, like if I make 15 widgets, I get paid X. If I make 20, I get paid X. That carrot and stick works. But when you start to get into a job or anything that has, some level of cognitive difficulty, you got to, it's like my grandma, you got to show them the money. You got to get there. But there's a point where paying people more money doesn't have an ROI of better success. What has a better success are really 3 things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So in our lives, when we start thinking about what happens, it's you have to make a living. We'll go back to the beginning. You have to know what you're doing before you can start to really build networks and do stuff. But it's really that idea of how can you motivate your idea. And from Drive and his idea of creating mastery, like, I'm good. This is my flow. Yeah. Like, I'm into this. This is great. Like what you're getting into, and you really want to get into podcasts. Like, this is your jam, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you were somewhere else writing stuff, you'd be like, it's cool, but I love this, right? And then that's that whole idea of purpose. Like, what I'm doing is more important than just doing something, And then autonomy, like I have the ability to kind of steer my own ship. Those 3 things, he then took some of those ideas and he wrote a book, a graphic novel called The Adventures of Johnny Bunko. And if you're ever looking, and this is a big key, so if anybody invites me to the graduation party, I usually get this book for them. And it's about this guy, Johnny Bunko, who has this little sprite come in, and it's almost like an anime drawing. And one of the best messages, there's 6 things that he talks about. And this goes back to kind of put this whole thing about the cat paradox and curiosity is, rule number 1, there's no plan. Now, I'm not saying don't have hope. I'm not saying don't have goals. But there's no plan. Like, if you go into a job and it's not working for you, then it's not working. Give it a shot, do it the right way, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. If you're dating this person or all of a sudden you have this life track and this opportunity pops up, well, I said to everybody I'd be doing this. You know what? There's no plan. I mean, you have to take care of who you are. You have to be honest and you have to follow through. I'm not saying be whimsical and just do whatever.
Yeah.
But really, when it comes down to you have these heart-pulling conversations, which you've probably had, Kevin, like, what am I going to do? My heart's set on X. But what if all of a sudden you start having a life in HR or something like that, and you find the right people? So kind of putting that together with the cat paradox is, you know what, curiosity may kill a cat. Cat's got 9 lives. And you should learn every time that you go out there and be okay, not trying to fail, but being okay with knowing, hey, this idea might be dead, but I can get back up, and you know what? There's no plan, which is okay. That's all right. There's responsibilities, things got to be dedicated,
Absolutely.
but there's no plan, because then you can continue to move and grow.
Wow. That was a really nice and in-depth look at the cat paradox.
Yeah, have you heard that before?
I've heard like the phrasing before.
But
singing
together?
cat, like, yeah.
Huh?
That's insane.
We're right here. And so now so when we start hearing this go viral in the next 4, 5, 6 years, it all started right here, Marian University. It's the first time I brought it out.
All right. And actually kind of even taking that like a step further too, because it does, if you want to really break it down, and even for my viewers at home, the biggest thing that you can do in life is knowing that for every no, there is a yes that opens up. Mm-hmm. Even if it's 3 no's, there's still going to be 1 yes that does open up. Mm-hmm. So kind of what you were saying too with that cat paradox, like not necessarily going in expecting to fail, but going in being willing to accept that you might fail, and like not letting that deter you from wanting to go to where you want to go. Like that's the important step, and that is a very important part of the mindset to have if you want to become successful. So, really keep that in mind, and really, kind of take a minute, let it resonate a little bit if you need to, and and really let that sink in and kind of show you. And this is coming from someone who I would say is pretty successful in the eyes of many people. And I think that if you are able to not only accept those failures, but take those failures and find a new avenue to go down, and maybe find a new way to make it work, that'll be what really pushes you to go past your limits.
Yeah.
And I would actually like to hear a little bit more about your book as well that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so let's go on that. I think, Kevin, you hit it right on the nail about, you have to know that no's are going to be out there, things aren't going to go well. And I'm gonna ask you a question. We're going to do a scenario right here.
Yeah.
So you're on a horse.
Okay.
The horse collapsed. It's laying on your leg. It's no longer breathing. What should you do?
Well, gonna try to lift the horse.
I'd get off that sucker. What's a horse? So it's knowing when the horse is dead.
Oh, yeah.
How many times do people stay on a dead horse? Because it was their idea, or if it doesn't come to fruition, they're going to look like it's their fault. That's that whole idea of getting married to an idea so deeply that, and this when you look at SpaceX, or you look at some of the great models of how do they do great innovation, it's about that failing fast or knowing when it's not going to work. And I think that's a critical part in, don't give up. I mean, I always think with Columbus, thank goodness they just didn't turn around. They stuck it out. I keep thinking things aren't going so well, but I'll see land soon, right? But it's that balance, if you will, of knowing when to get off the horse. Mm-hmm. And I think so many times, and we see it like as a trustee at Marian University, one of the things that I bring to the table that we really need to speak about, we heard about what happened with Cardinal Stritch recently, and they're not unique. Yeah. So we look at there's going to be less undergraduate, there's less people in the world that are getting born, right? Mm. So how can you reinvent yourself, and instead of being Walden Books, you become Amazon. Instead of being Blockbuster, you become Netflix. So even at a university where we start looking at, at this Catholic University of Marian University, what can we do to evolve to be different? To know that maybe the 4-year traditional how things look or what we're doing, what can we do to enhance or to make ourselves different than others so that we can add more value to our students? So this isn't just about us personally, but as you start to have an impact and have opportunities to influence or help make decisions, it's knowing when that horse is dead and then being, okay, it's nobody's fault. but it's my responsibility to move forward. So I would say not only being okay or understanding that no is going to be out there, and like you had said, maybe 3 no's to a yes, but somehow figure out and learn. And this is something, it's kind of that feel, because you don't want to quit too soon. But start, when is your horse dead? Like for you individually, like when is it time to pivot? When is it time to lick the wounds and say, okay, 8 lives left? When is that time? And that's a really, especially if you've invested so much. Like you think about it, you're doing this project, you're investing all this time, and then all of a sudden 15, 20 hours into it, you're like, oh, back to the starting board, this isn't going to work. But that's not a failure. You learn from that. So, yeah. So I think that's another nuance about that success is knowing when you got to pivot, knowing when the plan's got to change.
I actually really like that point that you brought up as well. Like especially about regarding like knowing when, not necessarily to give up, but knowing like when to take something that might not be working and trying to find like a different avenue. I think that it is very common nowadays where if someone is invested into something, they're gonna stick it out. They're gonna want to see it through, which is very understandable. It's a very admirable trait.
And it's not a bad thing. And sometimes it works extremely well.
Absolutely. However, there can be kind of, especially like in like the eyes of business as well, like that law of diminishing returns, where if you are investing, and you're not seeing any like, any kind of return, or you're seeing like very low return, then yeah, there might be a certain point we might be like, okay, so maybe not necessarily call it quits, but it might be a time to call in your idea and say like, hey, what are we going to change about you?
Yeah.
What are we going to reinvent about you so that, I do start to see those returns? Because when you start to see those returns, then that's an opportunity for other people to experience a similar result. And I am kind of curious as well. What do you think are the 3 worst qualities that like our current generation might have?
Interesting. I'm gonna kind of reword the question. I don't worst.
Well,
Yeah, here's the deal. I think that we have age fugue, if you will. I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I remember my parents saying, I can't understand this rap music. What are they doing? It's electric beats. What's going on? And if you go back, their parents would say, did you see those hips move on that Elvis? That's Satan. Blah, 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 right? And then let's go back to the 20s. Did you see what those women, those flappers, they were wearing like thigh-length skirts in that music. So I think when we say what's the issue, I don't think there is. I don't think there really is. I think everybody is different. I think we might have some trends. I think social media communication and different things have caused us to do different avenues. You're a kid, a young adult from Milwaukee that wants to better themselves in education, and here you are at Marian. You're not that special. There's a lot more like you.
Absolutely.
And there's more people that are doing well. I also think that our kids have a different perspective. I think about I think about like my son. I'll tell a story and about what I think is right about this era. And so I grew up. I think we had one person of color that was in our 1990 graduating class. And a kid from Greece. That's our diversity, right? So I went in the military right after high school, and I learned a lot of things, and it was pretty amazing. And then but I was still I was raised Roman Catholic and pretty very conservative and stuff, and moved back to town, and we move into a house, and right next to us are some amazing people. Find out that they're in a same-sex marriage, but boy, just great people, learning from them. My kids growing up, you're learning a whole bunch of different things about tolerance and about people that look different in different languages. So my son and I were at the doctor, and it's on a Saturday, as a cough during COVID. And so Ethan, I'm telling the story. You'll appreciate it. We'll get so many hits on this. He's going to be like, Ethan, did you hear? Your dad shared a story. So this is last year in January. He has this cough, right? And the nurse is in there and starts talking, says, well, I have children that go to the school district in North Fond du Lac. And so we start talking, and Ethan's like, yeah, every place my dad goes, people know him, right? So we start talking, and it's going well. And then the doctor comes in, and she starts talking. And she goes, yeah, my wife was just in here, and we really love our kids going to North Fond du Lac, and things are pretty cool. So I'm thinking to myself, interesting. So we're walking out, and I look at my son, and I said, so Ethan, what do you think of that? About the nurse and the doctor? He goes, Dad,
I work at Menards. There's no way a couple could be in the same department. That's a conflict of interest. How could that be? And you know what I was thinking. Here's my son, and he has these two women that are married, and they're doctors and a nurse, and that's what my thought process was. His was, that doesn't really matter. They're quality people, professionals. But it's this work situation at Menards where I work. This is a conflict of interest. But if you just take that thought process to go like, what are the worst characteristics? That is an amazing characteristic where my son now is growing up in an era where he's more focused on the content of the people and who they are and the services and these other things that really, in his life, he's going to be who he is. But they don't really impact unless we allow it to impact us in a negative way. It can be a positive thing. So what I think are some of the best things coming out of this generation is that focus on people and relationships, and I think there is a big desire to try to find that harmony. Now, if you listen to national news, if you listen to a lot of people, you're going to get divisive because that's how you get people to vote, is you get them angry. But that's this. People, I've talked to them all over. When you start talking one-on-one and you start getting local, we're in a pretty good place.
Absolutely.
It's just that we have to have the voice and we have to move forward and carry that. And so when you say what are the worst, I would say the worst characteristic that this generation has, and it's not your fault, is that youth is wasted on the youth. You're so young. You're so young. You don't have experiences, but that's going to be the same thing. I think what you bring to the table and what this generation brings to the table is an awareness and an opportunity to educate some of us that grew up in a world that didn't tolerate or allow for differences and different voices. So that's where I really think, and plus being in education, when people hold those schools, you get in there and see who these kids are and see what's going on. They're amazing. They're amazing.
I definitely do like the point, especially kind of talking about like our ability to be awareness. And this really does go back to like the impact that social media has had on really everyone's lives. Like with the power of technology, we can literally interact with pretty much anyone, anywhere, at any time. And it's really nice to see how a lot of people are really utilizing like those resources and using them to expand not only their influence, but also to improve the lives of other people. And, you see that a lot with all different kinds of content producers, like people that do like streaming, people that do podcasts like myself, trying to reach out. But I also do agree with like that sense of divisiveness being like a very big center point that people like to focus on.
Yeah.
Like you see it all the time with, like in politics or in news. And I think that it paints a very bleak picture for like our newer generations.
And not accurate.
Yeah.
Not even close to accurate.
And, it's a very good quote. Don't remember where it's from. You guys can probably correct me. But exceptions do not make the rule, right? So it's like sure, you might see it everywhere in the news that, so-and-so killed so-and-so because of so-and-so or, things like that. Those might not be the actual story. So it is like what you said, being able to have like those interpersonal communications and like those experiences will help to develop us as a tight-knit community. Yeah. And that is the goal of this podcast. Like I want to eventually help everyone to reach out together and become one big community that can help our future generations thrive.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any other points about that you'd like to talk about.
I think you talked about, so Kevin, you're talking about, you're talking about social media, and and I think any medium, be it film, be it radio, whatever, has always been hijacked by negative.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be, and to perpetuate whatever vice or whatever that is. I think one of the most important things when we start looking at mental health, social well-being, especially with our teens, your brain doesn't cognitively develop till your mid-20s. So you start looking at self-value, self-worth, suicidal tendencies, self-hurt, harm, all those things. There's a lot of research done. I learned this from the Happiness Lab. I forget what the podcast, what the host of that is, but I also did some reading. I read a story about, have you ever heard about the silver medal phenomenon?
I've not.
All right. So this has been replicated numerous times by professors and some of their students. But so when you look at, from a psychological standpoint, like for the most part, there's these different muscles when they're in a certain way that then transcends a happy feeling or not happy. right? So what they did, and the research that I had read is from the 2012 Olympics in London. And what they did is they looked at the medal stand, and then the professor and his support and his students, they did like a Likert scale. Like if these muscles, like what is the happiness of a gold medal, a bronze medal, a silver medalist? Well, they found out like from the facial measurements and the muscles, like gold was like 8 or 9, right? Okay, bronze was like 7. Guess what silver was?
I want to say like a 9.
4, 3 or 4. So get this: you have your gold medalists that they won, you have your silver medalists, and they're pretty happy, and then the most miserable are the silver medalists. Why do you think that is?
My guess would be like they're like not on opposite sides of the spectrum. Like they're kind of in the middle.
Yeah. Who are they comparing themselves to?
They're comparing themselves probably to the gold,
And who is a bronze medal comparing themselves to?
to the silver.
No, who's
the bronze would be comparing themselves to the gold as well, right?
no, everybody who didn't get a medal.
Oh,
I'm on a medal stand. I'm a medalist, right? Even though you're farther away from being the best, I'm on that medal. So it's more of a downward social comparison, and I'm not saying we want to belittle people, but that middle one, that silver medalist, I'm so close. If I can't be the best, I can't be anyone. Remember Ricky Bobby in Talladega second place is first loser, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you finish third, hey, I finished in the top 3, or ninth, I finished in the top 10. So looking at just that kind of like and then like transferring that out to the part with social media, I really think that a big part of what we should really help our youth and ourselves do is this whole upward mobile social comparison. We got to get rid of that. We got to get rid of that whole mindset of, because people have, like for instance, students, when I was in North Fond du Lac, we have about 55-60% of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, right? They'd never, and I'd say we don't have poor people. We just have people without resources. And many people have no idea they're poor unless you tell them they're poor. And then when you start looking at people with wealth, you might have more dysfunction with people and how they think and who they are than somebody who doesn't have wealth. We always think that because people have wealth or they have status, that's how we're going to rectify everything. If we have time, we could talk about Brown versus Board of Education, how some of those decisions really set us up for failure right now, but we have to get better. But I really think that's a critical part, is if we can start to get away from this upward mobile social comparison, or social comparison in general, understanding that on TikTok, on Facebook, on Twitter, those things are there, but as an education for our societies, we have to teach kids and each other how to consume information and what reality is. I know AI and deepfakes are going to make it harder and harder, but the reality of it is what you post. Like for instance, if this wasn't going so well, which I think this is fun, right? You would say, okay, let's start over, let's do some editing, right? We can do that with our faces. We have filters. So I think when we start looking at that social media and life in general, and kind of bring it all into hope, I think the way that we can really focus on that hope, and I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, that idea of right now. You know, even episodic comparisons, the good old days. Do you remember when? Or I can't wait for this to happen. Well, how about now? How about right now? What can we do right now? Yeah, have that anticipation, have that hope. You have to maintain that. But what can you do right now? And I think if we can get to a point where we start to really ingrain that it's not about comparing yourself to others, it's about comparing yourself to who you are and what you can do, and then how you can help others and improve others, I think we're going to have a lot more bronze medalists. I'm not saying that they're in third place, but we're going to stop comparing ourselves to what we didn't have and be excited for what we do have.
That was a very powerful message. And it really does kind of remind me of a quote that is actually on a very close to an old mind. But it says to learn from yesterday, learn from yesterday, live for today, and then hope for tomorrow, which I think is a perfect encapsulation of what you said, you know.
And your podcast.
Absolutely, guys. This is all quality stuff right here. And honestly, I would like to just thank you so much for like a lot of your messages. I think that my viewers would really appreciate all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And this really goes out to everyone. Like, not only don't think of yourself as someone that is insignificant because of where you are, or because of where you were, or because of where you are not. If you focus on like the very second that you're in, like, you know, embracing it and trying to improve what your now situation is, I think that will be the way that we can instill hope into our future generations.
Yep. And in this book I'm working on, it's called Shelf Life. I mean, the reality of it is we all die. Mortality is the number one killer. It gets us all. The Onion came out with that in 1997. I don't know if you know The Onion, but we only get one shot at this big blue marble, right? And so we have an expiration date. We have the best if you've by date. We also have family and friends who all of a sudden maybe there's an accident or maybe MS or maybe some dilapidating injury or dementia. We don't know when that's going to be for us. It's not like we have tattooed on here best if used by expiration, right?
Yeah.
So in lieu of that, what I believe is there's so many things, but I boil it down to let's maintain hope. We have to believe that things can be better and have a desire for good to happen. Faith is very, very big, but a lot of people have faith that bad stuff's going to happen, and that So that's where I see hope as more of a positive faith, if you will, and that's definitely you need to have that. And then other part is right now. The best predictor of future behavior, and I learned this from Harlan Schwartz, who interviewed, he's in prison right now, and I have more of it in my book, is he said the best predictor of your future behavior is what you're doing right now. Not what you've done in the past, because you can't do anything about that, but what are you doing right now? That's going to be the best predictor of what's going to happen in your future.
Wow, this is all like a really interesting conversation, and I really would like to just thank you again for coming onto the podcast.
You bet, man.
I
This
really
is fun.
appreciate it, Aaron. Before we do close off, is there any last thoughts or things that you'd like to say?
I'm excited for you. You know what? Invite me back. I'm pretty jacked up. I mean, hey, let's get some more of these in the hopper, and I look forward to your message going out and the difference you can make in the world. So thank you for doing what you're doing, Kevin.
Well, thank you guys all so much for watching. It's really much appreciated. And I would like to end this off with actually another quote that I remembered. I forgot who said it again. Don't hate me. But
That's why we have the internet. Thank you, Al Gore. We're going to be fine.
And it relates actually to some of that kind of the mental health issues. And what people have said is that anxiety is stressing about the past, or is stressing about the future, while depression is focusing on the past. So the best way that you could eliminate it is by to live in the present. And with that, I'll be closing all of you guys off. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay powerful.
Be well.